know that feeling you get when you're with someone that you are really well acquainted with, like you know them well, and they just seem off? You ask them, hey, what's going on? Or how are you? And they say things like, nothing, I'm fine. And you press them a little bit and they'll say something like, I'm just tired, or it's been a long day. But you know them well enough to immediately understand that something actually is wrong and they're just not telling you. It's the flat voice, the pause before they answer. You get a sense that they are not okay. Now, I want you to notice that it's a sense. You're aware, you're noticing, you're paying attention, you've got a cue that isn't making a decision about how they are. It is you perceiving how they are, and that has a name. It's called discernment. It's one of our most valuable skills. We tend to use it a bit more in life, in our day-to-day relationships, but a little bit less at work. We don't call on it as often, but it's just as essential to work and to leadership. So let's take another example to better understand this. Let's say you're a delivery manager with an important product launch coming up, and it's Thursday, you've got your team in the room, and everybody goes around and gives their status update. They're all agreeing everything's fine, the product launch can go ahead. Your dashboard is green, all green. And in the back of your mind, there's a flicker. And then you get to Marcus. He's your lead engineer. You've known him, worked with him for 5 years, and you've never in all that time ever had Marcus give a short, simple answer. But this time he says, yeah, we're good. So now you have another flicker. You noticed a flicker at an all green dashboard, which seems slightly unusual at this point in the project. And Marcus has never been that quiet, but the dashboard is green and everybody agrees. And you've got 4 other fires that you need to go put out. So you let it go. That flicker that you felt, that is the exact same flicker that you felt with your friend when they were saying, oh, I'm fine. You tend to trust this at the dinner table, but you trust it less at the conference table. It's discernment. You read the signal correctly, but then you made a decision to go off and fight your other fires that may have been very pressing and urgent. Doing something, or nothing in this case, about what you notice, that is judgment. In this case, we're going to learn probably not a good judgment call. This is the gap that we need to close as leaders, where we notice something, but then we don't act on it. We push it to the side. That's also a judgment call. It's a judgment call not to act on the information or the cues or the signals that you have. Sir Andrew Likierman is the former dean at London Business School, and he studied judgment for years. His finding is that most of us assume you're either born with judgment or you're not. Sort of like you either have green eyes or you don't, but it's not the case. Judgment is actually a process, and any of us can get better at it. We have to train ourselves to be better at judgment. So judgment is the call you make. It's the decision you make. It's combining your experience with the relevant knowledge that you have and putting them together to form opinions and make decisions. And frankly, we often have to do this in the absence of clear-cut data where we don't necessarily have an obvious path and things are uncertain. That's frequently when we have to make decisions or take judgment calls as leaders. And that's why discernment is even more important, because discernment comes before we make that judgment call. It's our perception. It's separating signal from noise and noticing a cue that contradicts the official story, like noticing that the dashboard is green and everybody agrees that the dashboard is green, but Marcus, who usually has a lot to say, is very quiet. Discernment, it's telling what's really going on from what looks like it's going on. And people with good judgment are generally skeptical of information, skeptical in a good way, meaning curious, meaning investigative, meaning wanting to make sure that all the details line up. So generally skeptical of information in a way that allows them to see patterns that other people miss. And discernment is what lets you spot that pattern in the first place. So spotting patterns, questioning them, that is using discernment to do its job so that your judgment and decisions are even better, more tuned in, more spot on. So discernment is what you notice, judgment is what you do about it. Discernment, for example, reads the room, and judgment either says, oh, there's something else going on here we need to address, or everything's fine, let's move forward. You can't skip a good call on a situation if you've misread your cues, which is why discernment comes first and why most of us as leaders need to strengthen our discernment as we also strengthen our judgment. Welcome to this Mini Bit Mighty leadership lesson on discernment and judgment. These are human intelligence skills that have always been important to leadership, but are really even more important right now as we begin to deal with AI. So how might you get better at judgment? At Boss at the Helm, we teach the Helm Method. It's a framework consisting of 3 primary steps, which is set your intention or aim, take action on that intention, and then with compassion and grace, adjust as needed as you go. So setting your intention, aiming in this case, would be reading the room and the report or the dashboard. Now, the report is everyone's edited version of what they already believe, right? They're feeding data to you. So you need to be able to look at those people and ask questions in the room to really discern whether the information that you've got is accurate. Notice that Marcus has gone quiet, and then set your intention to be discerning and to pay attention to the cues that you're receiving versus dismiss them. Now, I want to take a minute here. The tricky part about this is it sounds so black and white, this or that, when we talk about it in this example. But in real life, when you're sitting around the table, it's not like the team all got together and decided that they were just going to make a green dashboard and nod their heads and say, yes, let's go forward. What happens is that the team knows that the ship deadlines are really important. They don't want to disappoint you. They've also been working really hard. They hope they're ready. They think they can make sure they're ready. And they're tired. They're not actually certain about some of the concerns that they have, don't know if they're justified or not. And so they don't want to delay the process or spend longer in the meeting talking about it. They want to get back to work and make sure this product launches. That's regular human nature at work. And that's why it's so important to you as a leader to get curious, to notice your cues and signals, to know your team members really well, their personalities and their stress signals, so you can start to put information together to help you understand what's actually happening. It'll help you read the room and discern more easily the cues that you're getting, the things that you need to notice. After setting an intention and aiming to be discerning and pay attention to cues, you take action. So name what you noticed. I noticed these signals in the room. The gap between noticing and acting is often where we're on shaky ground as leaders, because we may notice and dismiss those signals. So you felt the flicker about the green dashboard. You rarely see an all green dashboard at this point. You felt the flicker about somebody on your team that usually speaks up more. And that's a good discernment call. Noticing that is important. Being able to say that you notice that is helpful to you. You may still make a wrong call or a decision that doesn't align. In this case, you had 4 other fires that may have been more urgent. You chose to go address them instead of bringing this up with the team. Now, here's the great thing about the Helm Method. You use compassion with yourself for ignoring your own cues. You use compassion with the team because they're trying to do their best and give you valid information. And you have a little grace about the fact that you might have ignored your signals and cues, and you go back and you say, you know what, we're going to pivot. Going to take time to just notice that this is still nagging me, bothering me, and adjust. The third step. So you read the data, you potentially disagree with it. You slow down, you look at the dashboard, you really dive into that data and you start to question some of it. Confident numbers are really easy to trust. And that's exactly why they can be dangerous to us, because the room is also agreeing with them. These data come from them anyway. Then they back it up with a nod, yes, everything's on track. But as a leader, to be discerning enough, you dig beneath the obvious, right? You ask more questions. You challenge that status, not in a combative way, in a curious, interested way. Even if you've already run off and ignored this and you need to pull people back together, a flexible leader, an intentional leader will be aware that those signals and cues need to be addressed. So instead of ignoring that hunch, if you have the time and the ability, you want to pause, adjust, and go ask good questions. Get really curious. If you want to learn some more about how to build curiosity as a skill, we have a video series on that, and I'll link that below the video in the comments. Now, for this upcoming week, here's a few things that you can put into practice. You could start by just noticing the flickers that you receive, the sense that something is off, and just say it out loud. Wait a minute, I just noticed that I have a sense that this isn't really what it seems like. Notice the difference between a feeling that you get and a piece of data that you're observing. If you want to take that further, then after you've noticed and named it, before reacting anything, spend a little bit more time teasing those apart. Separate the question of what did I just notice from what am I thinking about doing about it, even if that's ignoring it and moving on. Just separate those two for a minute and pause, and don't let the blur happen, because that's how you start to really eliminate that gap that many of us have, which is noticing and moving forward too quick. And then if you're ready to take it even further this week, act on just one signal. Get a signal, name it, investigate it, and then think about, what are you being called to notice? What might you want to do about this? Do you need to get more data or investigate things before you make a decision or take action? If this is helpful, the free place to keep building this skill is right here. We post new Mini Bit Mighty leadership lessons every week. This is part 1 of a 4-part series. So subscribe and come back here to learn more about discernment and judgment. These are human intelligence skills. And if you want to know more about human intelligence skills, I have a free download, the Unmachined Top 10, the human skills that no algorithm can copy. The link is also below in the video description. And if you're a corporate executive watching this and thinking, how could we bring these skills to scale across the organization? Reach out to me on Boss at the Helm. Let's get your people set up to be the ones that everyone can trust to make the best call no matter what situation they're facing. As always, I encourage you to start with yourself, lead yourself, and then lead others. Be a boss. Join us here next Friday. We're going to look at applying discernment and judgment when collaborating with AI. By the way, thank you for being here. Now is a great time to tap like and subscribe so you don't miss any of the episodes. We'll see you next week.